Hi everyone, I wanted to make a video to help you figure out how to do your model for your group project. So down here in the details and grading on the project instructions, one category is modeling gene function. So it says that you need to name the specific gene, describe the protein it makes, and make some kind of visual model to show how the gene and protein work. So it gives you some ideas of how you can make that model. It could be a PowerPoint animation, which I'm going to show you how to do. It could be something that you put some things down on the floor and take a video of you moving around objects and pieces of paper to show how your protein works. It could be that you make some drawings, and on your drawings you say, like, step 1 it does this, step 2 it does this, step 3 it does this, and then you insert those into your PowerPoint slides. You could even make like a little comic panel showing that maybe your protein is a character in a comic and it's going around doing little things, and you put that panel into your PowerPoint presentation. And ultimately, your model needs to show what kinds of body cells make the protein, what does the protein do, what other molecules does the protein interact with, how does the protein affect the body overall, and are there different mutations possible into the protein that lead to different phenotypes. So I'm going to show you right now how to do a PowerPoint animation. So this is one option for how you could do your model. So this is an example of a PowerPoint animation that I did. This is based on the gene called ACE2, and this gene gets activated in lung epithelial cells as well as some other cells. And when the gene gets activated, it makes some mRNA. And you can see in my PowerPoint animation, I've made it so the mRNA can move and things can show up at different times. Here, where ribosome is making a polypeptide, and then the polypeptide folds up and turns into this ACE2 receptor protein. And then ultimately, I could make some more to show about like how that protein works. You don't actually in your model have to show how the protein gets made, but how it works would be important. And this is just an example of some types of things you can do with PowerPoint animations. So now I'm going to show you how to do it. So first of all, if you're making a PowerPoint animation, you have to use the desktop version of PowerPoint. So you search for PowerPoint on your computer, open it up there. If you don't have it, you can download it for free from RTC's free software for students. You cannot use the web version of PowerPoint to do fancy animations. Unfortunately, it doesn't have those features. So I'm going to insert a new slide. So I just go to the Home tab and add a new slide. I'm not even going to need these text boxes, so I can click the edge of them and click the delete button to get rid of them. And now let's say I want to make a shape. So one way you could do that would be to go to Insert and choose Shapes, and there's many different shape options that you can pick. So for example, on the previous page, I had some circles. So I clicked the circle shape, I drew it. And let's say I don't want the circle to be filled in. You would go up to the top while your shape is selected to Shape Format. And then you can choose Shape Fill, which will let you fill it with a different color. Or you can choose No Fill if you want it to be clear inside so that you can add other things. So I'm going to choose No Fill. Also, you can go to Shape Outline and make the outline a different color like black, or you could make it a thicker line under Weight down here. So those are some things you can do. Let's say that you wanted to draw your own shape. There's generally a Draw menu up here, and you can click this pen and choose what color you want it to be. So I had some purple DNA before. And then you can just click with your mouse and draw your own shape. Now, afterwards, you often have to go back to draw and click the arrow so that you don't actually just end up drawing everywhere. I can select this dot I accidentally drew and then click the delete button to get rid of it. Now let's say I wanted to change the direction of this drawing that I did. I could select this and move it around, but let's say I wanted to move both strands of my DNA at once. What you can do is click on one, hold down the Shift key and click on the other, and then up in the shape format area, you can group those together. So you would click Group, and now when I move them, both strands of DNA move at the same time. I can rotate them and they both move at the same time. So that's one way to group drawings together so that you can move them all together. Let's say I wanted to make this DNA move. If you want to make it move to the other side of the screen or move around in a circle or something like that, what you can do is you click on the DNA, you go up to Animations, and you're going to choose Add Animation. The ones that will make things move around the screen are down here where it says Motion Paths. And I usually choose the custom path. And then I can draw with the custom path a line showing where I want my DNA to move. So maybe I just want it to move all the way around the screen. I can hold down and make some swirly stuff and all that, and then double click when you're done. And then it kind of previews how it's going to move. It's often useful to show the animation pane on the sidebar. So right now it's not showing, but if I went up to Animations and went to Animation pane, this is showing me what's happening, and I can play it so I can see what's happening. Now let's say that I did not like that animation. I can click on that and delete it, and my DNA is still there, and then I could try again. Anything that you have not added an animation to is just going to show up whenever you play PowerPoint. So right now this circle is going to be there, and so is the DNA as soon as I play my PowerPoint. If I wanted the DNA to appear in the circle and not to be there at the beginning, I could go to Animations and add an animation like appear or fade. All these are entrance animations that will make your thing show up in the first place. So I'm going to make it appear. And if I were to play my PowerPoint now, the DNA is not showing up at the beginning, but when I click, it appeared. You can make it appear and then move. So I could make my animation, I have to be clicked on something, so I can animation now, even though it's already appearing, I can add another animation and go to, say, the motion path, and now I can make my DNA move, double click at the end, and if I were to play the whole thing now, I click once and the DNA appears, I click again and the DNA moves. Let's say that I wanted my DNA to disappear afterwards. I could click on it again, I could go to Animations, I could add animation, and I could go to Exit and do something that will make it leave. Maybe I want to make it fly out. So now if I play the whole thing, click once, the DNA appears, click twice, it moves, click again, and it leaves. Now let's say that I want to make something else in here too. Let's say, what if I wanted to make it look like the DNA is turning into something else? I'll make another shape. So I'm going to go draw or insert a shape. I'm going to make some kind of triangle thing. No, I want to make something else. I'm going to just draw something, and I'm going to make it a different color, maybe orange. I'm going to make something that looks a little bit like an antibody. None of this is worrying about accuracy right now. I'm just playing around showing you how to make an animation for fun. And then you can figure out how you want to make your own animation, if that's what you want to do. Okay. Go back to draw, make it an arrow again. Get rid of my extra dots. I'm going to group this with the outline. Group. Okay, I got both of them. I held down the Shift key so I could select two things at once. And then I'm going to go to Shape Format and Group. So now I can move this thing around, get rid of my little dot. Okay, so I'm being weird right now, and I'm going to say I want the DNA to turn into this orange thing. So after the DNA moves, I would like this to appear. So I'm going to go to that, I'm going to go to Animations, Add Animation, and I'm going to make it fly in. And let's say that I wanted the DNA to disappear and fly out at the same time as I wanted this Y-shaped thing to appear. So over on the animation pane, it's telling you what order things are happening in. So the first thing that will happen is the DNA appears, then it's going to move, then it's going to fly out, and then this Y thing is going to fly in. So if I want these to happen at the same time, then I can go to that group 13, which is the Y thing. I can go up to Animations, and where it says Start, it says on click. So right now it's like when I click it, that animation will start. But I can say with previous, and that means these two things are going to happen at the same time. So the DNA is going to fly out at the same time as the Y-shaped thing flies in. So let's play it and see if it worked. So first thing, DNA appears, then it's going to move, then it's going to fly out at the same time as the other thing flies in. Yep, that worked. And you can go backwards with the back arrows if you want. So that's kind of the basics of animations. Let's see. Let's say I wanted to label some things on this slide. So I wanted to like label the DNA in the nucleus or something. You can go to Insert, Shapes, and choose a text box. So I'm going to just draw a text box, and I'm going to just write DNA right here. If I wanted it to be bigger, I could select that, and I could go to the Home tab and increase the font size, make it bold, whatever you want. Now, right now, that DNA thing is going to be there in the background because I haven't added any animation. So it'll start out like that, even though there's no DNA showing up in my circle. So if I want the words DNA to appear at the same time as that other DNA, I gotta choose the text box and add an animation. I'll make it appear, but I want it to happen at the same time as the first thing. So I'm gonna drag it up. So instead of being at the bottom, it will be up by the group 7, which is when the DNA appears. And then I'm going to go back before where I was to Animations, and instead of starting on click, I'm going to say start with previous. So now you can see number 1, when on my first click, I have two things happening. One is that the word DNA is going to show up, and another is that the picture that I wrote is going to show up. And then second click is group 7. That's the motion path, so that's when the DNA moves. And then third click, two things are going to happen. One thing disappears, and then one thing appears. So let's try it again. First click, both of those show up. Second click, this moves. Third click, one thing leaves and one thing appears. So ultimately, you could use an animation like that to show the protein that you're doing for your project. You could label the cell, maybe have a picture of a cell just as a circle, and you can be talking in the background when you actually turn the project in, but you might show what it does in the cells. If I was doing my ACE2 receptor, I might show something attaching to that receptor and then be explaining what it does. What other molecules does it interact with? So if it's a receptor, I'm probably going to have to show in my animation something attaching to it and what that molecule is and what it does. How does it affect the body overall? And are there different mutations possible? There may be, there may not be. With the ACE2 receptor, I don't know of any mutations in it, but it is hijacked by viruses like COVID-19 that use that receptor to get into cells. So I might talk about that instead. So I know it's some work. It's a little bit complicated. It might actually be easier to just make a model on your floor in your house and kind of video going through, okay, this thing is the receptor, and here you can see this thing attaching to it, this thing attaching to it, etc. Depending on what your protein is. Again, you could also draw it out as step 1, this is what happens, step 2, this is what happens, and show it on a drawing would be another way to do it. But ultimately, your model should be something you create yourself. You can take little pictures of things and move them around, but the overall, what the model is and how it works and is showing should be mostly self-created by somebody in your group. I hope that helps. So let's say you've made your fancy PowerPoint animation, but now you want to add it to your group PowerPoint so that everybody can see and share it. That is possible. So even though you have to make it on the desktop version, you can now add it to your group PowerPoint. So what you would do is you would go to File and Save As. You want to save it on OneDrive for Renton Technical College. You can pick any folder as long as you're going to be able to find it. So I'm going to say animation example is the name of this thing, and then I'm going to save it. You do need to be signed into your RTC account on the computer, and if you're not, it will prompt you to do that. So I'm saving it there. So now I'm going to go find it online. This is my sister. So I go to office.com. And I'm going to go find my file. So maybe I'll go to my recent. Should show up. It might take it a minute. Just go to PowerPoint and see if it's showing up there. There we go. I've got animation example, so I can go to that animation example. And you can click on your slides from this, and you can copy them. And then if you have another PowerPoint that you want to add them to, so let's pretend that this is your group one that's shared. Then I can just paste them in. It says I have to use the shortcuts, so Control V to paste, or Command V if you were using the Mac. And now it has pasted my 2 slides into my other PowerPoint that I had. And you should be able to play them as usual, even though the animations were created in the desktop version. If you clicked the button to play your PowerPoint here, it should work. So there's my working animation. This is the one I showed you as an example. And here's the one that we made with this DNA moving. So that's how to add it to your group presentation.